Hey guys, what is up? And welcome to the latest episode of the movie discussion Pocket Dimension, where time does not exist. The only thing that matters is film. We took last week off because of Halloween and Halloween-related craziness, stuff like that. We weren't able to salvage an episode of that, but I don't think people mind too much. And so we had a few ideas and stuff, and we actually, once again, came kind of late to deciding what we were going to do this time. And I mean, there were a few reasons why I'd thought of it, just because it's a movie I like, but also because, again, we were sort of doing some sort of darker thriller type stuff because of being around Halloween. We might as well continue that. And the other thing that occurred to me was that we'd already done Island of Lost Souls, and I always thought this movie kind of makes a sort of interesting companion piece to that, and that it has some, still similar elements and themes, of course. And this would be the 1960 French movie Eyes Without a Face, or Les Yeux sans visage, from director Georges Franju. And it's a pretty well-known film nowadays. I think when people talk about like international cinema or French cinema, it gets brought up a lot. If you're like big into horror, it gets dropped a lot, I think, for being fairly influential and stuff like that. Even some of like the lesser elements, you could argue, found their way into later horror, like Michael Myers' Mask. The whole idea of Michael Myers' mask was kind of similar to the mask that shows up in this movie, because the idea was they just wanted a white featureless mask, and that plays a prominent role in this movie, although in a much different sort of setting and context, but still, and other stuff too, even the eye, and then of course an older trope, and the main thing that relates it to something like Island of Lost Souls is sort of the mad scientist character who performs inhumane and unethical experiments. But this again has a different slant to it because it's slightly more altruistic or sympathetic. But anyway, yeah. So it was a movie that I knew for a lot of years without actually seeing. I was probably only about 4 or 5 years ago that I finally first caught it, and I was just sort of blown away by how good it was. Because sometimes when these movies have these sorts of reputations, and you hear about them a long time before you actually see them, you start to wonder, oh, can it really be as good as people say and stuff like that? But I mean, I just think it's such a poetic and sort of artistic sort of film, and it is a horror movie and it has all the horror movie elements, but by today's standards it doesn't seem that way, but at the time very much so. And we were talking, we talk a lot on the other show too, the Sausage Factory, is a lot of us are horror enthusiasts and stuff, about it's the main genre of film that gets the least respect. And you understand why to a certain extent, because most horror is fairly schlocky and it's just there to titillate and shock the audience, and it's not really supposed to be taken too seriously or done too artistically. Every once in a while something slips through that is more so. And probably the big one came after this was, I think most people say The Exorcist is really the one that sort of elevated the genre, and where people would say it's a good movie, not just like it's a good horror movie or it's good for horror, but it's a good film, period. But I think it's true that there were some before The Exorcist, and I think this is kind of one of them, which is funny because, again, back in 1960 when it came out, it had such a different sort of reaction. There were certainly audiences and people that appreciated it at the time, because a good film's a good film, but at the time it got quite a bit of a negative backlash from a lot of critics and stuff. Just first of all, criticizing the director himself, who had a pretty good reputation at the time, Franju. I think he'd done some various really well-acclaimed work, including some really interesting documentary style stuff. And there were people out there that just seemed to think that he was sort of debasing himself a bit by even daring to do a horror type movie, that it was below him and stuff, so there was a lot of backlash against the movie at the time. Famously, when it premiered at a film festival in Scotland, several members of the audience fainted when there was the face reveal and stuff. And
I mean, we were talking, before the show. I really don't even think this would be considered a horror film. It's really more of a maybe art house thriller, maybe.
art house thriller, yeah, I think so. But I guess back then we didn't have all the intricacies and subgenres we have now and stuff, so it just fit into it. And the reasons for doing it were kind of interesting, because it was the producer's idea, Jules Bourcon. Basically, was because French cinema was, although it was really about to pick up and become a very big movement, as we talked about the French New Wave and stuff like that. But the French had always been big fans of cinema throughout, and they were, they loved the cinema and stuff. And there's always, to this day, has that sort of reputation when you think about arty movies. Well, a lot of them are French and stuff. But it is true that French people, just like any other people, just enjoy sort of a good, entertaining movie. And throughout the 50s, French audiences really loved a lot of the horror movies, specifically the British horror movies being made by Hammer. They were big crowd pleasers. They made a lot of money there. And that's really where the idea to do this movie came from, was that Bourgogne really wanted to do a horror movie, and he enlisted Franju to do that. And they wound up picking the book that has the same title, I believe, Les Yeux sans visage, which has basically the same plot. But for the sake of the movie, they had to change some things and edit some things out and stuff, specifically to deal with censors, because, again, this is the height of really movies, not just in Hollywood, but all over the world, being subject to a lot of censorship and a lot of stuff being cut out. So there were some things they had to tone down and change around. But I haven't read the book, but for the result you get, I kind of feel like they're good changes. Sure. One being like to sort of focus more on the Doctor as being a little bit, even though he's killing people and doing highly terrible and unethical things, it's still for a good reason, even though you shouldn't do it that way. They present him more sympathetic, and they present him a little bit less mad. Now, they do, of course, have the kennels full of the dogs, and you understand that he's doing that experience to them too, but they don't have any scenes of like animal vivisection or anything like that, which are actually in the book, I believe. And again, this is even around the time like Psycho and stuff had come out, and blood in movies was not really a thing. There's blood here and there, but had a tone down blood and gore. But I think the way they did it's kind of like when we talk about, as we talked a lot, like the original Halloween, the less is more thing, and how it really works. And I feel like it really works in this movie, and it makes the reveals that much more shocking. And that's what I like too. I really like the reveals in this movie, how slowly they build up the things. Like when the Doctor very first comes home, it's actually a very long scene. It's him driving onto the compound, parking. Then you see him walking through the basement area with the dogs. He goes into the main house. He goes up the stairs. He goes onto the second floor. He goes through a door, and then you see a smaller staircase going higher. And it's not till he starts going up there that the music starts to change. And finally, he goes into the little parlor where his daughter is. And it's very slow. And at first, there's not even any music or anything like that. But I think it's really great. I just love how they do it. Yeah. It's just sort of him going from his job in the real world into his weird, hidden, secret world where his daughter, who the public at this time believes is dead, is hiding. And I think it's just wonderfully done. And the house reminds me of like the house in the original Resident Evil game, with its big stairway. But then there's a hidden, smaller stairway off to the side. I can't help but think of that too. So I think it's a really great atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few sequences like that where it has those long tracking shots. I mean, I'm talking 5-minute long shots just following people through. Which there's a few directors now that do a lot of that stuff. Like what is it? Paul Thomas Anderson is one that comes to mind.
That's true.
But it's really good stuff. It's really great, great cinema. It's the movie's only an hour, maybe an hour and a half. What is it? 90 minutes, probably right on the nose.
Yeah, I think it's 86 minutes, something like that.
So, I think it works well. If it was a 3-hour movie, it may get a little monotonous, but I think it works well.
But it's a fairly straightforward plot with a small cast. It's not like there's much characters and subplots and stuff, so it can move along quite briskly. But it takes its time here and there to flesh things out and to build proper, I think, atmosphere, and it really pays off for sure. I was going to say something about Hitchcock and stuff, and I don't know. But anyway,
mention Hitchcock, that'd be enough.
Yeah. Sure, because I mean, he's the king of the thrillers, and he was very active. It's the same year that he did Psycho, but it's also the same year as we mentioned. We were talking before the show. It's the same year Peeping Tom came out. So 1960s kind of like a big awakening for sort of like thriller type movies, at least, and the very first hints at like the slasher genre that would develop a decade later. This movie doesn't really have any slash elements, except the person does get stabbed, and again, you have a mask, but it's not a mask of a killer necessarily. It's all very different, but still, you see how these things get pieced together over time.
I think her wearing that mask is so much more creepy than if she had just had the full, makeup face the whole movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's again, I don't know if it was really their intent for it to be creepy or if it just worked out that way.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that seems to have just worked out really well and I really give a lot of credit to the actress too, because again, it seems funny now to us, but at the time, one of the things when people were like slamming the movie when it first came out, people like ripped on the acting. Now, I'm not saying the acting was great. It's not a movie full of amazing performances, but I think the actress that playing the daughter, Christiane, is really good in that she seems sort of ethereal. She seems sort of detached. She just sort of floats around, kind of, I think. And when she's wearing the mask, I just love has really great sort of otherworldly movements and stuff that I think she does really well. And when she's wearing sort of that long, I don't know what it is, house coat dress thing, I can't really describe it well, but when she's wearing that with the mask and she's just sort of daintily walking around, it's really great. I think it's a wonderful effect, and you can understand why the actress herself is cast, because when you see her in the scenes where her face is, temporarily repaired, and of course it's the actress's normal face, she has like the slight facial features that make her eyes look really huge and expressive. So she was really well cast, I believe. The actress being, what is it, Edith Scobb, I believe is the name. And as Christiane, and I don't know, I think she plays it really well, and it's a really interesting character that doesn't have to have a lot of dialogue to get the depth of her feelings across. To be in this sort of weird situation. On the one hand, she's grateful to her father, but on the other hand, she sort of blames him for she says that the accident that caused her facial disfiguration was his fault in the first place, and she's living this life where he's making her pretend to be dead while he works on her, and she's aware of what he's doing, and she's upset about it, but she's still, for now, allowing it to continue. And throughout the movie, you really get to see how that affects her and her mental and emotional state deteriorating until you get to the climax of the movie, which I think is just one of my favorites, but we won't go there just yet. But Pierre Bresser as the Doctor Genesier, an interesting sort of figure in this, similar to somebody like Dr. Moreau, except at this point he's still well regarded by society. So he's wearing a mask to society, you can say, if you want, because he's very he's at the top of his profession. We're introduced to him. He's giving a lecture to the public and his peers, and he's talking, and he's actually talking about the experimental procedures he wants to try. People know this came out in 1960, and I'm not really up on medical history and stuff, but I do know this was way before this kind of stuff was possible with skin grafts and stuff. So this was way before that was even close to being possible. So for contemporary movies, this would have been really remarkable stuff that he would be talking about doing, because it just did not happen. They were, I think, at least decades away from having the sorts of techniques and technology. So it has sort of a sci-fi aspect to it from that point too, at least within that context and stuff. So that's just one sort of thing you have to understand about the movie watching it. Otherwise, you'd be like, oh, okay, well, people do skin grafts and stuff like that. It was a big deal. It's before any of that was a thing. You get to see that he's very well respected in society, and he's really successful. It's funny, like the first 5 minutes. You could say it's kind of clunky, because basically the first 5 minutes of the movie, besides, well, except for the intro, because, okay, the intro is the mysterious part. You have his assistant dumping the body of a disfigured girl into the river. And then, at the time, you don't really know what that means or anything like that. You have to find out later. But then the next 5 minutes, you get his speech, and then you get sort of some characters talking. It's basically them just sort of spouting exposition for the audience.
Yeah.
It's like, he's a brilliant doctor. It's like, but he's been so different since his daughter disappeared. Yes, and that horrible accident beforehand and stuff. Like, everybody's just sort of spouting, it's like, here's what's going on, people. but I don't mind directly, but it is kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean, would you rather that or like a voiceover?
Yeah, exactly,
That's
right?
pretty much your options.
Yeah. So yeah, he's got an assistant named Louise, who you find out is really loyal to him. She's kind of like his Igor, but very different from being Igor in that she's just sort of an ordinary, well-to-do looking woman and stuff. But she's very loyal to him because he previously repaired her face with a similar sort of method, but apparently her damage wasn't nearly as bad as what happened to his daughter, where her face was just obliterated. But anyway, so she feels endless gratification and loyalty towards him, so she's willing to do whatever she can to help him, even though it's some dark, terrible stuff, because she, obviously she feels not just indebted to him, but that he's doing really great work and he is trying to help his own daughter. And it's very effective for him, because that way he to have like a sort of a pleasant looking, fairly upper class, middle-aged woman to lure the young girls he needs. It's a lot better than just sending some creepy guy out, right? Even you can, whenever we see these movies and people get picked up by hitchhikers and stuff like that, it's like, well, we don't do that nowadays. But one thing we do still nowadays is people will still trust women much more than they'll trust a guy, right? Like,
sure,
you can understand why these young 20-something women, they'd be like, okay, I'll go in a car with her, because it doesn't, even today, it doesn't really register that this pleasant looking middle-aged woman would really be some sort of threat or anything like that. So I think it's very believable how it's fairly easy for her to procure girls for him. And of course, he needs girls of a certain sort of look. They have to be a certain age, facial structure, and he likes them to be fair-haired and blue-eyed, although I don't think the eyes really matter, because the whole point is her eyes are not damaged. Eyes without a face. Her eyes are okay. She sees fine, but anyway.
Yeah. Is that even possible? Like to like, I know they can do skin grafts from your own body, but can they do it from someone else's?
Like, oh, like an actual like facial
Like,
transplant
could you
thing.
actually do that?
I don't think so, because I don't think I've ever heard of that. Obviously, you couldn't, to do it to living people would be unethical, and you couldn't do it.
Right.
And I can only assume there must be something that wouldn't work, of like taking them off like even a fresh corpse. Like, I don't know enough stuff about it, but
It's probably
but
like blood types and stuff.
yeah, and there's all that too. And the movie does sort of try to address how there's problems with that, because one of the things is he keeps failing, right? He's been doing this for a while, and it keeps not working. And at one
Just
point,
dies.
and
The
at one
tissue
point,
dies.
yeah, she does seem, when we get to see her face, she does seem completely fine. But after a few days, it starts to deteriorate and rot away and stuff. And then he knows he has to take it off and start over and stuff. So yeah, it's a very, very difficult, maybe even impossible process. We never really get to know if he would ever be able to perfect it, because of the events that the movie takes and stuff. But great music too, which I think really adds to the atmosphere too. Really cool, sort of haunting, not too in your face, kind of more subtle.
It almost
Subtle
reminds me of circus music.
Yeah, the stuff whenever it shows Louise, the
Yeah,
assistant, it has like sort
right.
of that circus stuff. Like, I don't know if it's just to
It
put us,
works. I
yeah,
think it
maybe
works
just to put
well.
us at ease, because it almost seems like it's pleasant, but there's something sinister behind it, which
Yeah.
is kind of like what Louise is like. So yeah, whenever you have her out sort of on the hunt, you get that, and that's how the movie opens, and it's a very effective opening, because you don't know what's going on. There's this woman driving down a dark road at night. She has somebody in the back seat slumped over, who you can't see the face or anything like that, and you don't know what's going on. Then you find out, okay, they're slumped over because they're dead, and now she's gonna toss them away. Yeah, and so what happens there is, after that body is found, and of course with its face missing, because at the time of this, we're not sure exactly how long it's been going on, but after the accident, it was said his daughter gone missing, but she hadn't gone missing. He'd simply kept her hidden away from society while he tried to work on this, and there was an ongoing investigation to find her. But here's sort of two birds with one stone. Once the police find the body of this person, this young woman who's very similar to her with the face missing, he gets called in by the cops to identify the body. He says, "Oh yes, that is my daughter." And nobody has to dispute it, because the father of the actual daughter is going to come in, and they say, "Oh, there's no need for you to come in. because the father identified it as his daughter. And you can say, well, that's not very thorough, but I think it is, because I think cops would do what they can to spare people that if they can. It's just like, oh, there's no need for you to go in because he's confirmed it. So you don't need to put yourself through that, and you can still have the hope that your daughter's out there. It's kind of a funny scene because they meet coming out the door, and he's just saying, so you're sure it was your daughter? And he's like, yes, I am. And he's like, oh, I don't know what happened to her. And he says, oh, it's funny, I should have to comfort you. At least you still have some hope. But of course. Yeah, but the rest of it, but yeah, it's got that theme, that sort of circus-like music whenever you got Louise going out on her errands. The rest of the time, it's, you know, more what you'd expect, just sort of like haunting, slow build-up music and stuff. And there's lots of scenes that don't have any music, which I think is good too. It just, yeah, just silence while the characters or whatever are doing their things. Like I said, when he's walking through the house, you don't get music until he's right up there. And it's music that's actually in the movie. It's a little music box that she's playing that he comes in and turns off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the lack of music is almost more effective.
Yeah, I think so. I think that shows a good touch of, you know, knowing when to have soundtrack, knowing when to not have it. Stuff. It can really change the impact of a scene, without a doubt. Mm. But yeah, I mean, he had some really talented people on this. His cinematographer, I think it's a German name, Eugen Schuften, had done quite a lot of famous movies, going all the way back sort of the beginning, in that he was in that he had worked with Fritz Lang on Metropolis way back in the 20s. And done all sorts of movies. I mean, obviously that's probably still the most, but tons of movies all throughout the 20s, 30s, 40s, right up to this movie. And he was he'd done, what was it? He'd made some sort of method or something. Hold on a second. I had it, and then of course I lost it. Where did it go? Oh yeah, so he had something called the Schuften process, which was a sort of special effect that predated like blue screen effects and stuff, and a lot of people like Alfred Hitchcock imitated it if they couldn't get him and stuff. But anyway, so yeah, there were some fairly talented people involved in this movie, which again I think is part of the reason for kind of the backlash from like the snobby cinema critics and stuff like that. There's like, oh, these were good, you know, talented directors and filmmakers and stuff. You know, what are they doing making this lowbrow sort of, you know, shock entertainment? You know, they shouldn't be doing this, because they took that sort of stuff very serious. Keep in, as we said, the French love cinema. The oldest magazine in existence dedicated to film is Cahiers de Cinema, which came out I think in 1951. In France. So they were, I mean, all countries, you know, have their love affair with movies, but maybe France even more so and stuff. And at the time, you know, they were taking this sort of stuff seriously, and they weren't, so there were a lot of contemporary people at the time. You didn't really see the movie for the quality that it has and its artistic merit and stuff. They just sort of dismissed it as lowbrow horror. And it was funny too, because of how it got released in America. It went along with that. Because what had happened was it got released in America 2 years later, in 1962, and it was dubbed, of course, and certain things were cut out of it, and not just you know, the scene where you see the cutting of the face, because but they also, it's funny because even though they had to cut out stuff for censors in the U.S., they also tried to play up the angle that he was more mad scientist. For instance, the movie has a scene where when he's working at his clinic, you see that, you know, besides his crazy whacked out experiments and murders regarding the whole face thing, he is a normal doctor trying to help people. And you have this scene where he's with a boy and he's trying to reassure this boy that he's going to help himself. That was cut for the American release because they wanted to play up the mad scientist thing. And so anyway, it was dubbed, and they gave it a ridiculous title.
Doctor.
The Horror Chamber of Dr. Faustus. And they released it on a double bill at like drive-in theaters and stuff with this other movie called The Manster, which is, you know, exactly what it sounds like, one of those sci-fi horror B movies of the time and stuff, where you've got a guy that gets like a second head growing out of his shoulder. And I guess terrorizes people. I don't know, but so really, like this movie, and I mean, even if you do those things, the movie still is what it is. So it must have really confused American audiences too, because it has like this sort of schlock title, and it's on this double bill with this other B grade type of movie, and then even with the changes, it's still this very sort of highly expressive, artistic, slow paced film, despite its dark theme. So I really don't know what American audiences would have made of it at the time, considering the way it was presented to them.
The Manster.
Yeah, the Manster. I saw the poster. It looks great. He's got another head, shrunken head, like growing out of his shoulder. Yeah, two-headed monster. Invasion from outer space by two-headed alien creature. Yeah. So
I was going to guess it has something to do with the hamster. Like half man, half hamster.
I'm sure such a movie exists somewhere too. So yeah, so it wasn't until like the mid '80s that I think Eyes Without a Face started to got noticed. It got another theatrical release in September '86, and people started to take note of it and stuff. And I think the director again was enjoying a bit of a renaissance where people were looking at all his work and stuff. So it took a while, but eventually the film did come to be well received. But again, it was kind of raked over the coals at the time. They were saying that it was just sort of a poor attempt at the German expressionism and stuff like that. Minor genre, quite unworthy of his qualities. There's a quote. Some people that are very angry about it and stuff. But it eventually, like a lot of these things, it found its audience, I suppose. But again, I'm sure there were people at the time that recognized it for the great film it was, but yeah, overshadowed by a lot of stuff. Like, as we said, like a lot of movies going forward. I mean, in the next, 10 years, film was going to change so much. You could argue this is another one of those films that's sort of ahead of its time. And, most audiences kind of aren't ready for it.
Yeah. As most things like that are not respected in their time. Because the director died, I think, soon. You said he got re-released in the 80s.
Yeah.
I think he died soon, probably right around then.
Let's see.
87.
Yeah. Yeah, it was towards the end of his life that, he was sort of starting to, the people were sort of taking kind of like a second look at his work and stuff like that. But it's funny too, because again, one of the things that people liked about his work was he was really good at doing surrealism and stuff like that. This movie, I think, is just another good example of that. It's not like I've seen his other work to compare, but still, I feel like this fits into it really well, and it has I don't know, it just sort of has a haunting sort of romantic quality to it that I really like, that I think is rare in horror, but I think is one of my favorite things in horror, when you have some sort of beauty underneath, the horror. And obviously this movie is sort of about trying to restore beauty lost, and the depths of ugliness someone goes to restore it and stuff. And as we said, I guess for any marketing, I don't know how marketing was back then for this. We have I'm sure images of the girl in the mask, and it's understood that she doesn't have a face. And people, I'm sure at least some people watching are anticipating, when we're going to see the face. It's a great reveal. It's a really great reveal.
It is.
It's all done so slowly because it's really poignant and ties into the story. It's not just at some point she's standing there and takes off her mask and we see it, or we see her looking in the mirror. It's great. It's when she actually sneaks down and we get the idea. It's the first time she's ever, even though she's aware of what's been going on, I think it's the first time she's ever been down in the experiment area. Probably you get the impression that her father and Louise have done what they can to shield her from it and keep her out of it. So she manages to sneak down past them to finally visit the latest young woman they kidnapped, and she's walking around looking at the things and stuff like that. And she has the mask off, and it's a great reveal because it's just when the woman who'd been drugged is just coming to, and then she gets to see Christiane looking down at her, and it's a really great shot. And and then she probably faints again after screaming and stuff. And even in black and white, it's very visceral and very effective, and it looks really good.
Mm-hmm.
There's another movie where I think black and white just really plays his strength. I wouldn't want to see this colorized. I think there are a small group of black and white movies where you could say, yeah, that could benefit from color, I think. But there's so many that like are so well done in the black and white, you can't picture them otherwise. So I think this is another one of those movies. It just looks so good in the black and white.
I agree. I think there is a colorized version of this available, though.
Oh, yeah?
Because, I came across a few screenshots of it. That's the only reason why I picked that. And it looked okay.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know if it would ruin it or anything, but I do think it is best seen in black and white form. I think it just has sort of a feel to it and a look that lends itself well to the lack of color. You know, like it's easy to understand with certain movies, especially like film noir. It's like, well, film noir, it's like made for that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about draining color out of the world and stuff like that. This has, you know, even some noirish sort of sensibilities to it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
if it had focused more on, say, the cops, it could have been more noirish. I'm not saying it should have. In fact, I liked it. It focuses mostly on Christianity, which was another sort of slight change from the novel, where the novel, I don't think we got too much point of view from her in the novel, so I understand that it mostly stuck with the doctor himself. Shift the focus over to her, which I like, because you get to sort of feel the depth of the range of emotions again she's feeling about having her life ripped away from her in such a terrible way, having conflict of hating her father but also still loving him as her father, and then of course the horrible disgust and guilt of what's going on her behalf, and then, you know, all that great really battle of emotions that's going through that eventually comes out in a really great way in the film's climax.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a really great choice to kind of shift the focus over to her. And again, it's not done through her like having long soliloquies or a lot of dialogue and stuff. It's a fairly brisk movie. There's not a lot, but it really is very effectively brought across, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But what's funny is, yeah, he'd some of his documentaries had focused on sort of like scientific stuff. I know there was one movie that had something to do with or something like that, and he had like this scene of juxtaposition where it would show children outside playing and then cut back to like animals being slaughtered at a slaughterhouse or something like that. So yeah, it's kind of seems to me like he had a good background for this sort of movie, because it has like some of those elements in it, even if they had to tone down the animal stuff. So again, in the ending, it all gets understood very well, in that once the animals are freed, the first thing they want to do is take revenge on the doctor, which is great.
I laughed.
Which is great.
I laughed when that dog did that.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't really hate the doctor as much as you're probably supposed to, because I mean, I feel like, you know, contrast to the Island of Dr. Moreau or the Island of Lost Souls, I don't really feel like this guy was necessarily crazy. I mean, he had a purpose. You know, he was trying to make his daughter not, deformed anymore, and he probably felt guilty. You know, so
I mean, he was trying to like benefit humanity. He thought, you know, if I can help her, I can help others. And he still, as we said, operates in a normal capacity. He's like a good doctor in all those other ways. Whereas, yeah, Moreau was a guy who was playing God, and sort of wanted and was really only doing things to benefit his own ego.
Yeah.
Surely this doctor has a bit of an ego too. I think all the brilliant doctors do and stuff. But as we said, he's got more benevolent. And at the end of the day, besides being a scientist or a doctor or a surgeon and stuff, he's a father. His daughter, and he wants to help her. And he thinks, well, I have these talents and these gifts. I should use them to help her, because that's what a father would do. Doing, you know, monstrous things too, kidnapping innocent women and stuff like that. But yeah, yeah. So I think it's true that you can feel, you don't just necessarily feel gratified when he dies. You do feel, because I don't think the ending is that sort of ending. It's not like, oh, you're getting what you deserve. It's just sort of more like just more tragedy, kind of. It's like things have already been pretty tragic, and then they end on a sort of even more tragic note.
Yep, you mentioned the soundtrack, and I think you can't mention the soundtrack without mentioning barking dogs in the background for quite a bit of
Yeah,
the movie, which
yeah.
I thought kind of added to it a little bit. Made it a little bit more uh, just kind of jilted. You're off kilter a little bit more. Like
Yeah,
this.
I think so. Yeah, it adds to the atmosphere of where he's at, that it's, it's a strange place where
Mm,
bad things happen type thing. I think for sure. I like and it is disquieting. It's noted that when, one of the girls that gets kidnapped, the Swiss girl, and she arrives at the place, she takes note right away that all these dogs are barking. She says,
yeah,
"Well, how many dogs do you have here?" And Louise just smiles. She's like, "Oh, you see, you'll be well protected." But you see right off, like she knows something's wrong. It's like, it's weird being taken to this like faraway place and there's all these dogs here. Like that's wrong. Like, that she's nervous about it. It's true too. But yeah, I really like how the movie, and again, I think some of this comes from some of the documentary work he's done, is that it really does focus on sort of the scientific aspects going on here. Um, there's a lot of really good close-up shots of the surgical instruments and the lamps and all these things, the scalpel, the masks, the operating tables, kind of showing the contradiction here. You've got like, it's very, it's very deliberate and it's very scientific and precise and stuff. And it seems so, which is something in our world we're kind of used to. It's like, yeah, okay, that's medicine, but then it's juxtaposed with, these kind of terrible acts to these poor innocent women and stuff. And I think it's done really well, and it accentuates the feeling of tension or horror or whatever you want to call it and stuff quite well and stuff, because again, he's not doing it the way that somebody like a Dr. Moreau would do it. As you said, he's not insane. It's not maniacal. He's doing it with a steady, practiced hand, thinking in his head, this is for the greater good.
mm-hmm.
You know, and as true as that might, even if you want to argue that's true and stuff, you can't help but feel, these are innocent victims that are in no way signed up for this, and they're still going to go through it. There's even a part, I think, where you hear like church bells at one point. I think uh, when he's when they're trying to bury one of the victims, which I think is a really nice little touch too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they paid a lot of attention to details like that and sound and stuff like that. And so again, you can look at it a lot of ways. Sort of, you could say that the modern world, how you can sort of lose faith in science and medicine and stuff because it's only more accentuated nowadays, where we just sort of live with a sort of confidence in our science, in our medicine. It's like, oh, it's great and it's here and it's helpful and we're so glad to have it and stuff. But there's a darker side to it too, and that a lot of these things. This is an extreme example because it's a horror movie and stuff. Very extreme stuff, but a lot experimentation to believe that the path of medicine has always been 100% ethical, but it hasn't been. Of course, there's all sorts of things that were considered completely normal decades ago that nowadays would horrify people and stuff. But not a lot of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then just some of it was, again, just a lack of knowledge, like not actually knowing things that we know now as fact, and some of the things that, oh, that's what we do. That's how you treat this. It's like, no, oh god, now we can watch this like the enlightened modern audience, like, no, don't do that and stuff. But always believing what they were to do that.
You know,
But
watching this movie, I think of a lot of other films that were kind of influenced by it, and even movies like I saw Darkman the other day.
mhm.
I think even films like that kind of take a little bit from this one.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that, but that's very true. You've got a deformed person.
It's like, oh, don't look at me, I'm hideous type.
Mhm.
That
Where you
Kramer.
feel like, yeah, you feel like sympathy for them and stuff, and
Right.
they wait. The one thing they want is just to have their life back and be back in society and stuff. And again, you've got
Mm-hmm.
this beautiful young woman who's father has basically convinced her it's better for people to think you're dead, and then I can reintroduce you to the world with a new identity. That's better than, people knowing what had happened to you. Part of that's probably his own guilt for apparently causing the accident. She accuses him of driving like a maniac. But yeah, definitely some other movies. And as we were talking before the show, there was at least a couple things that were very directly, influenced. Spanish director Jesus Franco had used elements of those throughout his films, and he'd done a film in 1988 called Faceless, which has a very sort of similar plot. I haven't seen it, but you've seen it.
Mm-hmm. It's much more, horror.
Yeah, more of a slasher, I guess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the idea of luring unsuspecting victims to perform surgery. What was it? The guy's sister to help her. So a similar sort of plot.
Mm-hmm. And I think John Carpenter modeled The Mask for Halloween somewhat after.
Yeah, I think
Michael
so.
Myers.
As they said, it was important to them just to have sort of a white, featureless mask. The point was it was a mask that was going to just be blank and not look like anything. And I'm sure he would have, seen this and said, well, yeah, that's a similar idea. As we were saying, we didn't know really when they were making this movie if like the idea of the mask was really supposed to creep people out, or if it just worked out that way. It's like, wow, that's a really sort of creepy effect to this willowy young woman walking around with this expressionless white mask on. It's very effective imagery.
Yeah, it's the lack of expression, I think, is what makes it so creepy. It's
right.
Just,
it removes the humanity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which again, you can understand why that works so well with somebody like Michael Myers. It's perfect because no humanity in him. He's a merciless killer. No matter what's going on, he just does the same thing. He doesn't react, whether he's chasing somebody or killing somebody or if somebody's fighting back. It's all just calm and under the mask.
Well, just imagine if they'd made Halloween, but it was just just a guy. Like he was not wearing a mask. Like just a guy with same Michael Myers, but you can see his face the whole time. It totally takes the mystique out of it.
Yeah, no, it totally wouldn't have the same effect and stuff. And they even have that moment in Halloween where once the mask gets pulled off and you barely sort of get to see his face, like the first thing he has to do is get the mask back on. Like that's his first priority. It's like because his real face is the mask and he needs it. It's his identity. Without it, he isn't anything and stuff, which is actually a really different effect from, say, whenever the mask comes off Jason. Whenever the mask comes off Jason, he's got that crazy face. It's kind of like, oh, now you see me for what I really am type thing.
Yeah.
Whereas what I like as we said with Michael Myers, it's like, well, what he really is just a guy. It's the mask that makes him special. It makes him different. Whereas, the idea for Jason is like, I've got a horrible disfigured face and it covers up. And all the movies have to end with the mask coming off to be like to add to the horror. It's like now the mask is off and he's even more horrifying. Like, I mean, I just watched Part 7 and that might be the worst one where he looks the most ridiculous with the mask off.
Part 8's pretty bad too.
Well, yeah. I think so. It's too bad because not to devolve into more Friday the 13th talk because we do a lot of it, but I mean, I'm not really that big of a fan of 7. I like it okay, but I do think the way Jason looks in that movie with the mask on and everything is kind of like the most is the best sort of example of him. It's pretty much I think what most people think of, even though it's funny because it's part fucking 7 of a series. But I really think like that's the most sort of iconic image of Jason.
Yeah,
it's the first time he was played by
Kane
Hodder, and what makes it a little different because it's the second time he's in zombie sort of form. He's got like the chain around his neck, and for most of it, he's just come out of the water, so he's like dripping wet. I think that's kind of how a lot of people picture Jason is like the image in Part 7. But yeah, once again, it's like we've had the mask come off his face every single time, and we have to keep upping it, making it different. By 7, he just looks ridiculous. He just it's like this weird like overbite. Like I don't know.
Yeah, he's more and more deformed every time.
Yeah, but as we said, like anything, there's so the value of diminishing or the law of diminishing returns. It's like you eventually reach a point where it goes over. I think you definitely have by Part 7 at least, maybe even before that. But
it's so shocking because I went back and I've watched a lot of movies recently, and I didn't realize how often the mask did come off before. You know, I mean, I knew it came off, but I couldn't say, oh, it came off every movie.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, virtually every movie.
It's a staple of every movie. It's like, okay, we're at the final act, we're towards the end. That mask has to come off because it's supposed to be one more level of scare. And it might have been at first, but it just got to a point where it was ridiculous. You didn't care anymore. It's like he's not menacing. He's like a lot less menacing with the mask off, really. Stuff, and that's one of the things I always thought they understood better in the Halloween thing. I mean, I love the series for their differences. I'm glad that Friday the 13th isn't as blatant a Halloween ripoff as it could be. It did forge its own identity and stuff like that, but I know what I prefer, and it all comes back to that sort of white mask, and and this movie maybe first established that.
Well, I like the whole aspect of the shape.
Sure.
It's just you look, there he is. You look again, and he's gone. I love that aspect of it, as opposed to Friday the 13th, where it's just a menacing, hulking guy.
He'll smash through walls and
coming
stuff.
at you. Yeah, it's much more of a different type movie, which I think is why Rob Zombie missed the point of it so much.
Oh yeah, well, we could do a whole thing talking about how we think Rob Zombie missed the point and stuff. But I mean, absolutely,
he's just like right in your face the entire movie. It's not any of that. Like, that's why I love the first Halloween so much, is because it is so, the
need some chips and class this up.
The paranormal aspect of it.
Sorry, viewers, I'm kind of hungry. Go ahead.
Are those all dressed?
Actually, no, I haven't had all dressed in quite a long time. But I used to really love all dressed back when I was in, like, say, my teens, when it was just barbecue and stuff. But
I told you guys a few years ago.
Only my third or fourth favorite barbecue, because all my favorite barbecues have gone extinct or gone somewhere else. Like, fuck you, Humpty Dumpty. Well, not Humpty Dumpty, but fuck you, Old Dutch, you bastards. I used to think that Old Dutch just bought out Humpty Dumpty, but Humpty Dumpty still makes chips, just not in my area. Like, you can get them in goddamn Maine, where Orc lives. It's so... Anyway, that's a whole episode, too. Me flipping out about chips.
Yeah, I had the all dressed maybe a couple of years ago. I think I showed you guys.
Yeah.
They're pretty popular around here now.
Yeah, they're interesting. They were like Canada's favorite chip for a long time.
Mm-hmm. They're good. But shit.
People can listen to my chewing. We're talking about how effective the shape is.
Yeah, but I mean, that's why I love the first movie, and it's watching all this other stuff and then going back and watching, and I understand it's not very, it's kind of underwhelming.
Sure.
I think it works really well. It's like going back and watching Psycho. You need to keep in mind, the year it came out, and all that stuff too.
Yeah. But I think that's why a lot of those giallos work so well too, because there's some element, they don't have masks, but close up of like the black gloves kept in the shadows and stuff like that, because it takes the humanity sort of out of it. Even though these are human killers and stuff, it's sort of removed, and so we only get the most sinister parts. And that's why when you get to a certain point with some of these killers and they're showing you too much, it's like, yeah, I get why they'd be scary, but it doesn't really work in a movie thing. Like, I recently watched a movie that I'm sure, like, you've seen, and I bet you our friend Pezzel really loves, because he just seems to have a soft spot for all these movies. But I'd never seen, what's it called? Yeah, it's not Maniac, or yes, it is. Is it Maniac? Which one's Maniac?
Where he chops the scalps off the women. The Elijah Wood one, or
yeah, okay, say no. Okay, so not Maniac, because I like Maniac. That's actually pretty cool. No, this is it the Mauler? Man, the Mauler, the Mangler, man. I thought it was Madman.
Oh, Madman. Yeah.
I watched Madman, and I have to say, as a big fan of slashers, and it came out in '82 and stuff, like, slashers by their definition are derivative, and and it's hard to separate them. So that might be the most unoriginal derivative slasher I've ever seen in my life. Absolutely everything about it is just a copy of something else and a worse version of it. And the killer is stupid and ridiculous. And now I understand, like, and it seems ridiculous to me that that's the template they went for in those newer movies, fucking, Adam Green or whatever. Yeah, the Aleister Crowley or whatever like that. Like, that is not scary. Like, this
Hatchet.
big hulking, yeah, exactly, Hatchet. Like, this is apparently where Hatchet comes from. It is, yeah. is Madman. Like I couldn't. Oh, like I just started watching Shudder and stuff, so I was like, oh, Madman, that's one of the ones from back in the day, like that I heard of and stuff, and I'm sure that like our friends have like done like Blu-ray reviews of and stuff, and like, but man, I'll never watch it again. It was so crappy and boring. Just nothing about it stand out. No identity whatsoever.
I've always kind of felt the same way about Madman. I mean, there's a lot of really bad slashers out there.
Oh, sure, absolutely. But I was surprised because this is sort of like right at the golden era. This is 82, I thought, because, you know, there's like 81, as we said, anytime sort of the year of the slasher. It had Friday the 13th Part 2, Halloween Part 2, and The Burning, all fantastic, all memorable in their own way and stuff. And, you know, for the most part, a lot of the slashers had fairly high quality until for the next 4 or 5 years. But this is still like kind of in the height, and I think it sucks. Like, I'll never watch it again. Like, nothing memorable. The characters are stupid. Everything about it and boring. Everything was about stupid and boring. I couldn't stand it. The dialogue doesn't even make sense half the time. They talk like absolute idiots. Like I couldn't believe how bad it was. But I just know that like some of our friends like, oh yeah, I've got that special Blu-ray and stuff like that. I'm like, fine. I guess if you have to have everything. But to me, there's no point in owning it or revisiting it. I couldn't believe how bad it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, and part of that was the killer was just so dumb. He was just some big hulking thing in like overalls. Like it's like, oh, it's like a big country hick guy, and that's basically what they did in the Hatchets. And again, I get it. If in real life I saw that, I'd be like, holy shit, I'm scared. But in a movie, it's not scary. Because you know what? If I saw the creature from Ernest Scared Stupid in real life, I'd be scared in real life. But that doesn't make him scary to see in a movie. But yeah, if I saw Booger Lips for real, absolutely I'd be afraid. Yeah. But just like in the context of a movie, it's like, well, that's pretty freaking stupid, and that's how I feel about those characters and stuff. But yeah, it's best done, I think. I mean, we can say to a certain extent, Jason transcends it a little bit by being in your face. But as we said, if you just like me, you say like, yeah, if you had to pick, you would pick the more subtle, the shape and the shadows that disappears and doesn't show emotion and seems very inhuman and stuff. And yeah, you can trace that to some of the imagery. Definitely to this movie. What's really funny is like, this is just a weird sort of coincidence that, of course, you know, 1997, they made a movie called Face Off, a movie I adore. It's ridiculous.
Oh, here we go.
But I love it. And what's funny about that is, you know, it does have a scene of somebody's face being come off, and it's about them switching their face and stuff like that. But also what's funny is that it's a John Woo movie. And just like almost any John Woo movie, it features a scene with doves flying into the air. And this movie ends with doves flying into the air, which I think is just a funny little like, coincidence. Which is really funny. But we might as well get to it, since, as we said, you know, it's a cool movie and stuff, but it's not too deep or anything. It's not too long. So we'll talk about the ending. I just love the ending. I love it so much. Where finally Christiane, you know, sort of cracks. She can't live this way anymore. Before that, she was even asking Louise to just kill her. She's like, I know my father has drugs he injects the dogs with to kill them when an experiment goes wrong. She's like, kill me. And she's like, no, you have to believe in your father's work and stuff. So at this point, she just feels like it's no way to live. And of course, she feels the guilt about what's happening. So she goes down to the latest kidnapped victim. That she, you know, cuts her strap and frees her. Louise comes in to stop her. She stabs Louise right in the throat, which is the only part that had the scar, which was the only thing that was visible of her father having worked on him. And she always covered it up by wearing a pearl choker. So it was just sort of significant that she stabbed her right there, like the one little imperfection that her father couldn't get rid of for her. But anyway, she stabs her there. And then she releases the dogs, who tear apart her father in their own bid for revenge, and of course they mess up his face. But after that, she just sort of she's wearing her mask, and after that she just walks out into the courtyard and walks out into the night. And before that, of course, when she's freeing everything, she also frees the doves that have been in her room. There, I guess, were her only real companions, and the dogs too. There's a scene, I'm jumping back, but it's true. Like, when she visited the dogs, she knew that, like, even with her face off, the dogs still liked her and loved her because they're different from people. Anyway, jumping ahead again. So at the end, yeah, so you just have her walking out with the birds that she's freed flying around her and one on her shoulder, like, in the music swell. I just think it's one of the most beautiful moments in any sort of horror movie. It's a beautiful, beautiful ending. ending, and it's ambiguous. You don't know what's going to happen next. All you know is that Louise and her father are dead. They paid for their crimes, and she's just sort of walking out to freedom, although we don't really know what's going to entail. Her face is still what it is. She's wearing, I just love it. It's one of my favorite endings of any movie. It really hit me powerfully, and it's one of those times too where, like, the first time I watched the movie, I thought it was pretty good as I watched it, but then the ending hit me, and I was like, this is really good. And it's kind of how I still sort of feel. Like, I just love the ending. It's just a beautiful, beautiful moment in cinema. Great, just the shot, the way she walks out, the music, the shadows and the light, the doves, everything just really works. I really, really like it a lot. I'm not sure if that's how the book ends, but I can't see if the book could have a better ending than that. I think it's wonderful.
Well, she frees the girl, and then she frees all the dogs.
Yeah.
And then she's free.
And then she's free, and although it's still very uncertain what exactly that's going to mean and stuff, although you can't see her, she's not going to probably get jail time. You could see that, like, the cops would understand that, she had to go along with what her father and Louise did and stuff, so I don't think that.
She's doing fine. She just doesn't have a face.
Just doesn't have a face, but
she'll be all right.
I guess so. She can at least be reunited with that guy she likes and see if he can accept her without a face. Right. That's one of the things also that's funny too, is that when the cops finally start to get on to them, because this is right after the cops had come to visit inquiring, because the cops eventually, all they had was vague stories of, like, some of these girls that disappear being seen with, like, this woman, but they didn't really have much of a description. But somebody had mentioned, like, the choker, and that rang a bell with Christiane's, I guess, old boyfriend, in that he'd met Louise before, and that was really their break and stuff. So, like, okay. And they had this young girl who they'd taken in for shoplifting and let off with a slap on the wrist. So they brought her back in to send her out, and they're like, well, they threatened her, saying, oh, actually, there's going to be a trial, and we'll prosecute you after all, unless you do this favor for us. And they use her to sort of go on undercover for them as a girl at the clinic and stuff. And they do follow the thing. That is the girl that winds up getting rescued at the end by Christiane and stuff. And it's just sort of funny because it's like, yeah, they didn't have women police officers back then, so this is, I guess, what they had to do. Take some poor girl that had committed a minor offense and threaten her into a dangerous situation without telling her how dangerous it could be. So, it's kind
That's
of
the
funny.
sting operation, but it's real.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, they never fill her in on the details of what exactly the situation is or what kind of danger she could be in, right? They're just like, just go to this clinic and tell them you're sick, and then you can leave. Like, they don't say that, like, you'll probably be picked up on the road by a woman and then brought back to the place so they can take your face off. And stuff. And it works out. She winds up getting free and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's kind of funny because I guess that's what the cops had to do back in 1960, because there were no female police officers they could, like, send undercover or anything.
How attached to your face are you?
Because there's like we'll say 50-50 chance that you might wind up losing it. Those aren't bad odds, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, definitely one of my all-time sort of favorite endings in a movie. Reminds me of, like, another French director like Cocteau. Sort of that sort of dreamy kind of atmosphere that it has, for sure, which is just like it's not really a genre, but there's, like, a type of movie I love. I love surreal type movies that have, like, that dreamy feel to them, and this is definitely one of them. So just another one that I feel very strongly about. But we'll come around back to it. But it's funny because, yeah, just like you, well, a little different from you, but I'll say, like, throughout most of the year, I wasn't thinking about horror. I kind of was maybe at overdose on it. I turned off. I haven't watched horror in forever. And then finally, when I got to see it in theaters, I was really ready for it again. And I was really happy because I liked it. So then throughout all October, I really went all out and watched as much horror as I could. And like you and stuff, like, even though Halloween's over, there's still a lot of spillover, a lot of carryover. There were movies I couldn't fit in, and I'm still very much in the mood to watch. So what I recently watched was the Scream trilogy, which I'm a big fan of. I really like Scream. And it just hit me home, like, how, in light of everything that's going on with Harvey Weinstein, how interesting that trilogy is. Because the Scream movies were a big deal for Miramax. And Harvey Weinstein was a really big part of it. Now, you watch the first two, and you don't have to necessarily think much about it until the third one. You watch the first one, and you find out that Sydney, her mother, a year before the events of the first movie, had been murdered. And they thought that it was Cotton Weary, a man that she had been having an affair with. And the idea was her mother had a bit of a reputation, even though she was married, to, you know, have affairs and be a bit of a slut. And one of the secret reveals of the movie was she hadn't just had an affair with Cotton, she had an affair with Billy Loomis's mother, which was part of the motivation for Billy wanting to do all these killings and stuff like that, because his mother, upon finding out about that, left her father and split up the family. Then you don't really think too much about it in Scream 2, because it's like a lot of parts where they just go off in their own direction. Scream 3, as Iz even points out, follows the rules of the trilogy by bringing back stuff from the beginning and things. So then you find out that this director guy who was going to direct Stab 3, Roman, is actually Sydney's half-brother, who was born before her to her mother. And then you find out that it was before she'd met her father and stuff and had a different life, when she tried to be an actress and went to Hollywood. And that was why he decided to do that. And you find out he was the mastermind behind it all. He was the one that came to Billy and gave him the idea to team up with Stu and do these killings and all this stuff. So he's the big bad behind it all. And it all goes back to Sydney's mother. But the whole thing that happened was Sydney's mother was a young actress in the 1970s that wanted to, you know, break through. And we find out it didn't go so well. And while she was there, she wound up being taken advantage of by numerous, you know, I guess, powerful Hollywood-type people. And yeah, like she got like sexually assaulted and raped and stuff, and it really messed her up. And it changed her whole pattern so that later in life, it made her sort of, I guess, a bit of a slut that she looked, you know. So I just think it's kind of funny that, like, that's what's being exposed in Scream 3, because Scream 3 is very much about movies, and it's showing you like the sort of the seedy side of the film industry. Mm-hmm. And they're pointing out, and they have that guy that Lance Henriksen plays, and Lance Henriksen's the sleazy horror producer. He's like, well, you know, that's how it was back then. It was the 70s and stuff. And I'm just thinking, oh my God. I'm just thinking, like, what is Harvey Weinstein thinking about this movie as it's happened? Like, is he thinking it's funny? Does he just think, yep, that's the, you know? So it just sort of blows my mind now, because it's almost like Harvey Weinstein fits perfectly into like exactly what the movie is trying to point out. And I don't know what it means or anything, but it just sort of, you know, in light of everything that's happened and stuff, it just really hit me hard watching it this last time, watching Scream 3. I'm just like, was Harvey Weinstein just like laughing and smirking through this whole thing? He's like, yep, that's how it goes. I'm a Hollywood bigwig, and those young actresses are all mine for the taking and stuff. And this movie can make, you know, bring light to it. So, and even in smaller things, like they have like the in-joke with Carrie Fisher, where Carrie Fisher's there, and they're like, you just look just like her. She's like, I'm not her. She's like, oh, I was up for the part of Princess Leia. But who gets him? Who gets the part? The one who sleeps with George Lucas.
Oh, wow.
Now, and also, the actress that is cast as Sydney, right before she gets killed off, she screams that she doesn't want to die. She didn't fuck that pig, and she means Lance Henriksen's character to get the role just to die now. So you find out she got the role because Lance Henriksen, you know, so stuff like, so I'm just thinking this movie was like a big deal for the Weinsteins. This is one of their major franchises, and he's totally involved with stuff. Like, was he just amused by the whole thing? Like, because yeah, if you wanted to talk about movies that actually call attention to this problem in Hollywood, Scream actually are those movies. I know, just watching them all the other day, it just really hit me. I was like, wow.
Yeah, part 3's not very good.
No, it's not. I still enjoy it for what it is, and it is having fun and stuff. You can get Jay and Silent Bob in there.
Oh gosh, I think I told you. I tried to watch the trilogy again before part 4 came out.
Yeah,
and, man, I made it like halfway through part 3. I just said, nope, I can't finish this.
Yeah, I can understand that.
It's I don't know.
I like the characters a lot, so it carries me through part 3, but I get where you're coming from. Part 4 really let me down. It's not like it's bad, but just the whole, I don't know why I was so dumb, because I just, you know, because obviously cash grab, but still I just thought, no, they're really going to do something different here. And, you know, part 4 really isn't anything different. Like, they made it seem like, oh, this is the next level, you know, it's 2010 now, and we're really going to adapt it to that, but no, not really. And I'm not saying that's a big failing, because I'm not sure what they could have done. I'm just saying I was kind of set up thinking that this was really going to like mess with people's heads and be something really different. And yeah, it was just, you know, another Scream movie. It was okay. And it had and had the least believable set of killers yet. Like
Sure.
some scrawny guy and this girl.
I don't
Neither
even
of them
remember who
seem
was
like
doing it. I've seen it,
like
but I don't even remember.
well, the main mastermind was Sydney had this cousin, a teenager, who was jealous of her, and that was the whole reason. She was going to kill people off and then set herself up as a survivor girl so she could like do what Sydney did and get famous for it. And she roped some boy who liked her, like he's just some skinny, film. So yeah, you just have like this little teenage girl and some skinny guy, and supposedly they're the ones doing like the brute. At least Billy and Stu were capable of killing people, and at least in the third Scream, even though that was where they played the third Scream is the only one where there's only one killer, and yet it seems like the one where it would absolutely have to be more than one person, but that had at least somewhat the physicality. And the same thing with the second one. Billy's mom didn't do most of the killing. Most of the killing was done by Nikki, played by Timothy Olyphant. Yeah, you could picture Timothy Olyphant, what's her name, and throwing her off a balcony, sure. But yeah, in Scream 4, it's just like, what? These people, like, is that guy like 5'7" or something? Like, come on, man. But, yeah. Scream 5. Is it inevitable? No. Probably there'll be a Scream remake next.
Did you watch the series at all?
Yeah, season 2 is pretty crappy, but season 1's all right, even though the characters are bad. Season 1's enjoyable because you don't really care about anybody dying. You're like, oh, okay, good.
Was that the show where there was like video footage of one of the characters like making out with a girl?
Yeah, that's how it starts.
Okay, yeah, I've seen a few episodes of that.
It's like
Maybe.
this girl making out with another girl, and the footage goes like viral and stuff.
God, who cares?
But actually, it doesn't have much to do with the killings at all. It's just a little red herring.
Like filler, yeah.
It's just a red herring.
Yeah.
It has some pretty good kills, at least from that standpoint.
It only got season 2, I think, because Wes Craven died, didn't it? Wasn't it already officially canceled, and then he passed away, and they greenlit season 2?
I know the timing lines up that way, so that's very possible.
And that's what I heard. I could be wrong, but
yeah, it makes sense though because like by season 2, it's like most of the characters have been killed off, so they just had to introduce new people. Kill off.
the movies are too.
And then they had like that weird special, like the last episode of season 2 is like an hour and a half special. All it is just sort of trying to like rip off an Agatha Christie movie because it's like, oh, we're in a big house on an island and people are dying and the island has some sort of like like weird secret and stuff. Like it's like I wanted to like it, but it's just blah.
There's a lot of that going on.
But yeah, now on my Netflix that Slasher show is on, so I'm tempted to watch that.
Is that the name of it?
Just called Slasher, yeah. I don't know if it's supposed to follow an overarching plot or be different stuff, but there's 2 seasons of it there. Just like Scream Queens is on there, but I tried to watch an episode of Scream Queens and it sucked.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like season 1, okay. Season 2 is not any good. It's really campy and
I think that's kind of how I felt. Yeah. I felt like it was just sort of taking the Scream thing too far in Scream Queen, like trying to ape Scream. I don't know.
It's so self-aware. It's almost doing something completely different. But
yeah,
I started watching that show, Mindhunters. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yeah, that's new too. Yeah, I'd like to watch that because it's about serial killers.
Mm-hmm. It's not bad. It's I think David Fincher.
Yeah, that piques my interest. Maybe it can help fill the void of the loss of like the brief window where I heard like The Snowman was going to be a movie and I thought, oh, that'd be a good movie. Then I find out the movie's a complete disaster that they didn't even finish making. It makes no sense. Because apparently it's a pretty solid book, so that's sad.
Yeah, it's not
with its
good.
Main character Harry Hole. There's a good name.
Yeah, that's. Apparently, Harry Hole's been in other movies before. I didn't realize that was a recurring character, but
yeah.
What other films has he been? Is that character been in? And I know he's in the book series, but
yeah. Well, I didn't know any actually others got made into movies yet, but probably.
Yeah, I thought they did. I could be wrong, but
You know, a lot of these Scandinavian neo noirs have become big in the last 10 years. Biggest being, you know, like the girl who with the dragon tattoo and stuff was the tip of the iceberg of that stuff.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, haven't really been watching much lately. I saw catching up on some HBO shows.
Oh yeah.
Room 104. It's kind of cool. If you ever get a chance to check it out, it's the Duplass brothers. It's a hotel room that like over like 40 years is just shows different stories that took place in that hotel room. Like every episode's a different,
Oh, okay.
completely different. It's like anthology.
Don't think I've heard of it.
Not bad.
Yeah. Well, I'm almost through the second season of Fargo, which I like more than the first. I like the second season of Fargo quite a bit.
Me too.
I've only got about 2 episodes to go in that, but I enjoy that a lot. So that's been something good to watch lately.
Good. I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, it's. I mean, really, that's where the good stuff is these days. Is in some of those drama series because it's like people aren't going to the movies anymore, so they're putting all their production quality into shows like that.
So I wanted to see the Jackie Chan movie, but it's not even at my close theater. I'd have to go way out to the big one, so I don't know if that's a possibility or not. But I'm going to see Thor in the next few days anyway.
Yeah, I'm thinking about going to see it tonight. I can't decide.
Seems like it'll be pretty good on the big screen, all bright and colorful and stuff.
Yeah, it's getting great reviews, of course.
Yeah, people just love that director. He's like, everybody loves this guy. Like, I guess he's a really nice, fun, like, intelligent guy. Like, he's just one of those people that everybody just loves as soon as they meet him. So everybody's flipping out, like, the movie's doing well. They're like, oh, because I love this guy. I probably saw something he did before. I just can't think of what.
Yeah, I saw his name. Taika? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Taika? Waititi?
Yeah, I don't know how to say it either.
New Zealand, okay.
Yeah, it's holding down like an 8 point. Yeah, Taika Waititi. It's holding down 8.2 on IMDb right now, which is.
He did what we do in the shadows.
Yeah, which a lot of people really like, which I haven't gotten around to seeing, but I know I should see because a lot of people really like it.
Yeah, it's great.
It's hilarious, though, to think that he did the Green Lantern movie, which is one of the most awful things you'll ever see. So how did he get from Green Lantern to Thor? Like, how?
He did?
Yeah. Like, the Green Lantern movie is borderline unwatchable. It's that bad.
I'm not seeing it on his. Maybe he acted. Yeah, he was acting in it.
Oh, okay. You're right. Martin Campbell directed it. That makes me feel better then, because it's like, how could a guy who directed such a piece of shit do this? Martin Campbell's all over the goddamn map.
I miss Green Lantern.
He's actually the director of The Foreigner.
Oh,
Jackie Chan was talking about. He
I
also directed Mask of Zorro and Goldeneye, which I love.
I saw Green Hornet. I miss Green Lantern.
Don't even bother, man. Like, it's borderline unwatchable. I hate Green Lantern. I'm just going to say this. Even if they ever make a good Green Lantern movie, I don't care, because I think the character's retarded. Version of him. I think he's probably the most hated character in, like, superhero comics. Like, he's easily, if you're going to go by ratio of popularity and stuff, like, I am baffled. I don't care who Green Lantern is. It's the most popular one. Of course, now all the names are going out of my head and stuff like that. Ryan Reynolds plays or anything like that. Yeah, I can't think of it. But Alan Scott was the Golden Age one. He's the only one I had a little respect for. He was the magical one in the 50s as a sci-fi guy where they do the space police stuff. And what's funny is, like, there's not even a Green Lantern per planet. It's supposed to be per, like, sector, like, I don't know, which would include a bunch of planets, and yet Earth has produced like 5 Green Lanterns. Hal Jordan's the most famous and well-known, the one that would show up in most fiction, but there's Hal Jordan. There's a black guy named John something. There's a guy with a weird bowl haircut that I hate. There's Kyle Rayner. They just got another one because they wanted to have a Middle Eastern guy be one because DC and Marvel have both gone insane in the last 15 years about like making different. I'm not saying different ethnicities shouldn't be represented; they absolutely should, but they're only doing it by shoehorning them into like existing characters instead of creating new ones, which I think is kind of insulting. Like Ms. Marvel is now the new Captain Marvel, so it's like now the new Ms. Marvel is some I think Middle Eastern girl, which is fine. I guess it's cool and stuff, but she's just another Ms. Marvel. It's kind of derivative. The ultimate being, and I won't go too far on this, but of course everybody remember the Miles Morales Spider-Man, who yes, even though he was from the Ultimate Universe, is 2015 been part of the normal Marvel U now. So you've got two Spider-Men just swinging around. It seems cluttered to me, but whatever. So anyway, I don't want to go off the whole thing. And again, I want people who don't like whitewashing or anything like that, and I want races to be up. And I think it's a good thing that races are more represented in movies and comics and stuff like all that. I'm just saying, I think sometimes it's in poor taste and doesn't really do people any favors when all you're doing, instead of getting like say a minority or whatever character and giving them their own thing and just slapping an old persona on them. It's like, well, how will we make people like them? Well, they can be the new Captain America, something like that. I just think that's a disservice. But anyway.
Well, it's
not going to go into
how can we make this thing popular again? Like, hey, let's make him, whatever. Let's change the color of his skin. Have you? Oh shit! Totally forgot what I was going to say. Oh, have you heard that Disney is trying to buy Fox?
Yeah, it's funny because just the other day I was talking to Eric about how great it would be if the X characters get into the Marvel MCU, and he's like, "Well, I don't see that happening anytime soon." Well, so that would be good. It's the only time I'd be happy about it, because every time Disney buys something, I get more and more mad because I'm just like, Disney's just everything. Like, I at least somewhat grew up in a world where like distinctive companies had distinctive properties, and now that's all gone out the window where everybody just. But this is the one case where I don't care. Because one thing, I don't care about Fox. It's not like I ever really liked them in the first place. And two, whatever it takes to get the MCU done properly, and you can't have it without X-Men. I think the MCU is really great. I really enjoy it, even though it has some flaws and stuff. I think they've done a great job, but it still feels like a giant hole without X characters. So.
Oh, I agree. That's
but at the same time, it worries me because it's just like, does that mean they can't do any R-rated movies? Though Disney doesn't do R-rated movies, Like, I'm happy that the Marvel movies and stuff, like, most part are done so that people of most ages can enjoy them, because I think that fits the character. But some of these characters are more dark and deserve the R-rating treatment. And I'll give Fox credit for at least doing that to a certain extent, even if I don't like the movies. And I just feel like, well, will they be able to do that if they can get? I don't know. But it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, they were able to get... They were able to get Spider-Man from Sony. I don't know how that worked.
Yeah, I don't understand those things very well either.
Maybe they could just buy the properties back. Like, why do you have to buy the whole studio?
Yeah, but I don't get it either.
I mean, even then, Fox as a studio hasn't really done anything worth a shit in a while either. I mean, they did that. Didn't they do that Alien Covenant?
Yeah.
And
there's quite a lot of people that really like the X-Men movies, and that's fine, I guess, but I hate them.
I'm lukewarm.
People did, and everybody's really thrilled about Logan. Oh, it was so great. It's like, well, why do you want to see a character treated that way? I don't understand.
I was just looking for that. I want to watch Logan. I've been waiting.
Popped up on my Netflix, but that might be different from yours because I get a lot of Disney's. Or that's not Disney, so maybe it is. Because yeah, I get a lot of Disney stuff, but for some reason, Canadian Netflix gets Disney stuff a lot faster. Like the Star Wars movies are both on my Netflix and have been for ages.
It took us a while to get Rogue One, but
yeah. That's the other stuff I've been watching. I'm going to work my way up. I've been watching episodes of Clone Wars because I never really watched the show before. I'm only picking and choosing certain episodes because I've been reading some of the novels and stuff. One of the novels I read, Dark Disciple, was basically 8 unproduced scripts from the Clone Wars show, so it fit in pretty well. So now I'm just trying to watch stuff like that. So, and I watched Attack of the Clones, even though of all the Star Wars movies, to me, it's by far the worst.
Yeah, I agree.
make a list of all the things I would have done to make the prequel trilogy work sometime. Just for my own sanity, not for anybody's benefit, but my own.
You should do an ultimate
Most of it
fan
is
killer.
most of it would just be removing the coincidences. Coincidences, to tell you the truth. For instance, R2D2 and C3PO would not be introduced until what is it? Revenge of the Sith. There's no reason for them in the first two before that, because yes, you need to have that continuity, because in A New Hope, there's that continuity where he's looking for Obi-Wan and has known Obi-Wan, so they have to have had some connection. But there's no reason for them to have been like 40 years before that, and of course, the ridiculous things like C3PO was actually built by Anakin Skywalker, or R2D2 was basically Anakin Skywalker's little robot sidekick before years later he would be Luke's little robot sidekick, like that, like things like that. And even in Revenge of the Sith, it's things like, I don't mind them being on the Wookiee planet, but there's no reason for Yoda to talk to Chewbacca. It's like Chewbacca doesn't need to be that old. Chewbacca, even if he is on the planet, doesn't need to be there. He doesn't have to be a personal friend of Yoda's. Like, coincidences are just ridiculous, especially in the span of 40 years or whatever, and space with many planets. And yet people walk, like, if you live in a big city, and you have a friend who lives in the big city, there's a great chance that you'll never actually bump into each other. You might be friends and hang out, but how often do you just run into each other? Not often. And yet people in like different planets and galaxies just run into each other all the time in the Star Wars universe. And so that's another thing. So I'm on a roll now. So I like the clone army, and I get it. The clones are always a big deal, but there's no reason for the clones to all be based on Jango Fett, you know, and for his son Boba to just be an unaltered clone. Like, that's just ridiculous. Just all these little connections that don't need to be made. And I mean, I'll shut up now because there's so many. Oh, obviously the easiest way to get rid of Jar Jar Binks was, I don't like the Gungans as a race. Who have them, not be the Gungans. They be something fucking else. I can tell you that much. So yeah,
he's just annoying. He's fucking annoying. That's the problem.
The whole race is annoying and offensive, you could even say.
Yeah,
so,
it is.
Like, just terrible. So, like, I do believe, like, the overarching story of the prequels is fine. Like, what it has to do is fine. It could be tweaked. So, yeah, I just think there's a lot of it, just, those sorts of changes. You could make it a little better. But the second movie, what's funny is I did just watch Attack of the Clones, but I didn't watch all of it, because every time it was one of the scenes with Anakin and Padme, I just skipped it. I did not watch anything between them, because that's just garbage and just horrible, man. But I remember seeing that in the theater, and it's towards the end, the droid making factory or whatever like that, and jumping around. And I remember I was bored then. I was like, I'm bored watching a Star Wars movie. Like, I really wanted it to just end. Like, I couldn't. That was probably like one of the biggest losses of innocence in my life. Was I was a little let down by Attack of the Clones, or the first one, Phantom Menace. But I was like, okay, it was mostly because the kid is dumb. We're stupid kids, so now we'll get into the good stuff. So now I'm watching the second movie, and we're like, an hour and a half in, and I'm just wanting it to be over. I'm like, I wonder how much longer this is, and it just hit me. I'm like, how can I be thinking that watching a Star Wars movie? Like, it just crushed me. I hate Attack of the Clones so much.
I was like that in all three of those movies. Just bored.
I like most of Revenge of the Sith. My problems with Revenge of the Sith are just stuff that carries over from the other two.
We could talk about the problems in those movies forever.
Oh, I know. But just because I've been reading, I want to get some of the comics too. I feel bad that I can just get on board and start collecting at least one of the comics, because they've supposedly been really good. Star Wars is set between, it's like basically following Luke and Leia and stuff right after A New Hope. It's supposed to be pretty good. Not getting it now.
Clone Wars, is it worth it? Worth a watch?
The show?
Mm-hmm.
I think it has episodes here and there that are worth watching.
People seem to love it.
Yeah, the one thing I'll give the show is that it really does go out of its way to like give it important. Sometimes it's about like what Padme has to do as a senator and people trying to kill her and stuff. Most of it, of course, is various missions that Anakin goes on with. But there's other weird stuff going on there too, and they even try to give some of the clones personality. Like, there's a clone called Cody, who they're kind of friends with and stuff. Like, there's even a whole episode about a clone that was a deserter. Every once in a while, you'll get to see different Jedi and Yoda and stuff. I mean, it gives you a lot of stuff. Basically, I just watched the episodes that had the apprentice of Christopher Lee's person. He was Darth Tyrannus. He was one of the few things I like about the prequels. I like Darth Tyrannus a lot, even though he barely. And that's one of the things that is good about the Clone Wars show, because it's between Clone Wars movie and Revenge of the Sith. Because basically in probably don't remember, but in Attack of the Clones, he's there, but he doesn't really do much. You only just to find out, okay, he's the new guy working under Palpatine, and he has a very brief fight with Obi-Wan and Anakin. He's the one that cuts off Anakin's hand. Brief fight with Yoda, and everybody loves it because, oh, there's Yoda finally fighting and flipping around, which I guess is fine. But he he tries to crush them, so it distracts Yoda, so he gets away. And then if you just jump to the next movie, the opening scene is where they're supposed to be rescuing Palpatine from him, which is all, a plot. And then Palpatine turns on him and says, "Oh, kill him," and Anakin kills him. So that's all you get to see in the movies. But if you watch the Clone Wars show, he's kind of one of the main antagonists. You get to see him doing stuff. Anyway, he has this Dark Force adept, because she's not a real full Sith yet, called Asajj Ventress, this bald chick that usually uses 2 lightsabers. And she's pretty cool, and she's one of the main characters in the book I just read, and it ends with her actually getting killed. But she's a pretty good nemesis so I try to watch the episodes that have her in it, because I enjoy seeing her clash with them and stuff. It's kind of a weird disconnect from the book, though, because in the book they make it sound like she's actually kind of cute and stuff, but in the movie, in the show, she's not cute at all. And she's got like a terrible, like, evil voice and stuff. Supposed to be like this Jedi is sent on a special mission, and they tell her to recruit her because she's turned on Darth Tyrannus or Count Dooku, or whatever you want to call him. So the whole point, he's supposed to like enlist her help, and they wind up falling in love and stuff. And if you watch the show, you can't see how that could possibly be possible, because she's just this horrible villainess with like evil voice and stuff. It's just like, why is this guy falling in love with her? But anyway. At least parts of the show are good. Nothing can make me watch Star Wars Rebels, even though it's on TV constantly. I just don't like any of those people.
I'm not even familiar with it.
Yeah. Well, it's another thing that's considered canon. It takes place shortly before A New Hope, and it's just about a group of rebels. And I don't like any of them. I've tried to watch it a couple times. It's the same art style and everything and feel as that, which is fine. No problem with that. But I would definitely say Clone. It's much more interesting to follow Anakin and Obi-Wan than a bunch of rejects we've never heard of. And what's funny too is like the animated Anakin is way less annoying than Christian. He's voiced by somebody else and stuff, and it's just like, don't even try to be like Hayden Christensen. Just do your own thing. It's like, yeah, that's probably the best, and it works out pretty well. So seasons, which is crazy for a 3-year war, but most of them are pretty good. I feel like there's definitely a lot of filler, though. I think there's probably a lot of throwaway there.
Yeah, sure. There always is.
Cherry. I've just been cherry. I sort of read the little thing and like, oh, Victor's in this one, I'll watch this one. So that's kind of how I've been doing things. So after I watch a few more, I'll watch Revenge of the Sith. I'm actually mostly okay with Revenge of the Sith, the movie. Like I said, the problems it has are more than the other two. The things it does on its own, I'm mostly okay with. Especially some really great one. I really like Obi-Wan being against Grievous on the planet and stuff. I think that's pretty fun. What more do you want? The Obi-Wan Anakin up to any hype that people imagined for the last 30-some years before it came out. I mean, it was always referenced, right? People said, oh, that's how Darth Vader got his, costume and stuff. He was injured in a fight with Obi-Wan after he betrayed him or whatever like that. And they do go all out. They're like fighting on a planet that's full of lava that's like exploding all around them, and they're flying around. Like, they make the stakes pretty damn high. So, I mean, I'm mostly okay with that too. I mean, it still has plenty of irksome moments that again are carryovers, like his scenes with Padme. It's like, oh, I will conquer death. I don't want people to die. And all this stupid stuff like that. Like, fucking painful.
Oh, man.
And that no is like the worst part too. It's like, finally he's Vader, and that has like the worst no in the history of cinema. It's like, what happened to Padme? Oh, you killed her, don't you remember? No. Like couldn't they have done other takes for that? Like, it's the worst.
Didn't they add a no into one of the older movies too? Like when Lucas fucked it all up again and re-released all that stuff.
I don't know. That's the other thing I have to do, though. I haven't seen the original versions of the first movie in a million years, and I've had them on DVD for a long time now. Ryan burned them for me, and I keep not watching them. So I should watch them because I literally I haven't seen them since I was probably like 10. Because I got into Star Wars right around 1997 when they had the big re-releases. For the most part, I don't mind those changes. I'm just too used to them, but. A few, of course. I mean, everybody, like everybody else. Like, by the time I bought the DVD set, they had done the compromise. They didn't have Greedo shooting first and then Han. They had them shooting at the same time. That's what I own. The set I own has that change. Not the worst one, but the second worst one. But yeah,
I refused to buy them on Blu-ray until they release the original versions. I'm not gonna buy that crap.
It's so weird that I don't own the original version on Blu-ray, but I own the stupid prequel trilogy on Blu-ray. It's kind of sad.
That's really a sore subject for me, man.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I'm reading Heir to the Jedi, which is, again, I've just been trying to get waiting for the paperback versions of the movies. They're the books that are considered real canon now. Since 2014, there's a real canon, and the stuff that's not is, Star Wars Legends, which I'm okay with. It doesn't bother me too much. Verse myself in what they consider real canon now. Heir to the Jedi is really weird, though, because unlike almost all the other books, it's told in first person. Luke, and it's a first-person book with Luke as the narrator. It's really weird, but I don't mind it. It's just some like little mission he does after he blows up the Death Star.
Mm-hmm.
But they're fitting more and more stuff in there. But yeah, I feel bad that I didn't start collecting at least some of the comics. Jason Aaron was writing the Star Wars one. He's pretty good. He's the guy that did a lot of good Wolverine work in the last few years and stuff. I mean, when they launched when they launched the new Marvel Disney comics, like they really did put a lot into it. It's a lot of really, quality people were involved. So yeah, I feel kind of bad. I feel like that was kind of a missed opportunity that I should have at least started collecting one of them. But we'll see.
Did you see what's the Last Jedi? Is that the new movie coming out?
I've never seen a preview for it except like a super short teaser.
Well, I was just trying to even think of is that what it's called? Yeah, The Last Jedi.
I think Mark Hamill went on Twitter and told people not to watch it and said it's like full of spoilers.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I've only seen a really short teaser that doesn't really show anything. It shows like Rey swinging a lightsaber around.
Yeah. But what I was going to mention is he tweeted the other day on Twitter that when you realize that Luke is part of the dark side poster too, he's got the posters side by side.
Yeah, I retweeted it because what's great is like he's quoting both sides now,
That's
like
right.
Joni Mitchell,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is hilarious.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting, though. I hope he doesn't have some sort of a character arc where he turns evil.
I hope not, too, but what I'm hoping for, it just sort of shows that at some point he felt some pull from the dark side and stuff, because that is a big part of his character.
Sure.
And one of the things that separated him from other Jedi, and there's even little hints of it in like the movies, like in Return of the Jedi, when he goes to Jabba's palace to get in, one of the people tries to stop him, he force chokes. Choke people. That's a Sith thing. And I always loved that he did that. And the other thing is, when does he start beating Vader? It's like when he, instead of doing the usual thing that Jedi are supposed to do, is let go of their emotions and be detached, is he does give into his anger and hate, and he kicks the shit out of Vader. So he always had a little bit of darkness in him because of his father and stuff. And I always liked that being explored. As I said, what's not canon now, but I have the Dark Horse series Dark Empire, which serves as sort of an unofficial sequel to Return of the Jedi. It's all about Luke coming like this thing over. I mean, it's actually pretty good. Like, it's not amazing, but it's pretty good stuff. So if they play with the idea that he's feeling the pull or something like that, or it affected him, I'm okay with it. But yeah, if they do some sort of thing where it's like, oh, I'm bad now, like, no. I don't think so, though. I don't think they do that. Who knows, though?
I don't know, man.
because I really love Luke. Luke's one of my favorite characters.
I thought Force Awakens
Luke was.
I thought Force Awakens was okay, but I'm really starting to feel too much Star Wars stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of agree with what Mike said. Like Mike said, like a lot of Force Awakens doesn't stand on its own. A lot of it like really relies on what's going to happen next. I think that is true. Like Force Awakens, you have to sort of take with a grain of salt and be like, okay, I see where this is going, and you have to kind of accept it that way. Which is true. Like a movie should stand on its own and not necessarily what it's setting up, you know. So I get that. I mostly enjoy it, but I mean, I understand most of the things. I mean, I'll never be happy with Han dying, but I knew it was coming.
I didn't think it was necessary. No, I don't. I think that's stuff best left in your imagination and say, man, I wonder whatever happened to Han. Who knows? I mean, if they're going to move forward with the story, like as a fan, I didn't need those characters to be in the movie at all to like a Star Wars movie, But of course, shoehorning into a new audience.
I actually really like the ending where she meets Luke. A lot of people were upset. It's like you only see Luke at the end. I was like, works for me. That was powerful. But,
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, if that's the angle they're going with, he's obviously gonna. He's going to be Obi-Wan now.
Because the one thing I will say is, like, a lot of people have to understand that, like, their love of the original Star Wars. Well, think about A New Hope. When A New Hope ends, he never faced Vader. He hasn't become a Jedi yet. All sorts of stuff is still up in the air. So people can't flip out too much about stuff being up in the air in this one, is all I'm saying. Because, like, can you just go home completely satisfied after seeing A New Hope and just be like, yep, that ties everything up? I mean, the Empire is still there. Vader is still there. He doesn't really know the truth about his father. He's never faced Vader. Like, all sorts of stuff is totally up in the air at the end of that movie. All it was, yes, the rebellion have scored a major victory, and now Luke is going to continue his path of being a Jedi. But it's not an ending. So some people, I think, go a little overboard in criticizing this movie for, like, not having enough stuff done and relying on the second. I'm just like, well, how good is A New Hope if you take away the other two? It needs the other two.
Well, it was intended as a standalone film. I think that's how it works as a standalone
Then it's terrible as a standalone film because nothing is resolved.
Well, I mean, my favorite movie's, of course, Empire. So, yeah, I don't disagree with you, but, I mean, people love the movie not knowing there was more coming, so.
Yeah, but I think they all wanted more to come.
I mean, I can't speak on it because they were all like out, by the time I was old enough to watch.
Yeah.
So I watched them all, back to back. So.
Yeah. I'm just saying, as satisfying as A New Hope is, it in no way is a complete story.
Sure.
The Empire's still around. Vader's still around. Luke is not a Jedi. All sorts of stuff.
It is a story, though. It's not completely open ended like everything else they're doing now. Where it's like, oh shit, you just wait for what's coming in like 4 years.
And Empire, like a lot of people, is my favorite too, and it has the least conclusive ending of any of Star Wars.
Yeah, that's true.
They're just standing on a ship, like, oh, this is bad. We lost Han. Vader's your father. All this stuff. So I can just imagine for Star Wars fans, that must have been like the years between 1980 and 83 must have been like crazy bad for like Star Wars fans back then. Although that's where the Marvel comic did come in at the time. I have the first 6 issues of the original Marvel comic, which is the first 6 issues is basically the movie version of, or the comic adaptation of Star Wars. And not only that, I also have the oversized dollar one where they're all brought together. Hold on. This called a Marvel Special Edition. There it is. So this is all 6 issues together in one.
Oh, that looks great.
Yeah, look at the back.
That's like like a magazine cover almost, like a magazine size.
Yeah, that's what it is. They're called Marvel Special Editions. They used to come out in the late 70s and early 80s. So yeah, this is the first 6 issues all together into the story. It's funny. It's funny though, because like it says on issue number 1, and of course it's the greatest space fantasy film of all. You know, turns out that's true. But we're kind of used to seeing those sorts of things on like comic book covers, like, and it's never true. This one's actually true. But yeah, the official adaptation of the 20th Century Fox blockbuster movie. There's Han shooting first.
That's great.
No shot from Greedo, just getting blasted away. And I also, in less good condition, Empire. My Empire, this one's like falling apart though. I barely ever take it out. It's in really bad shape.
That looks awesome, that cover.
Yeah, it's a really, really good cover. It's got the Snow Speeder, Vader, and the Star Wars saga continues. Yeah, there we go.
Wow.
May the Force be with you. But yeah, I pretty much never take this one out because it's falling apart. But this one's in pretty good shape. But yeah, the old Marvel special editions. But what's funny is like there's a bunch of comics between these that are just that aren't canon now, but they were part of the continuity at the time. Because yeah, back in those days, like I said, if you watched Star Wars in 1977 and you had to wait till 1980 for that to come out, you could collect the Star Wars comic and read about stuff that was happening. And Vader and stuff did show up in them, but because of the movies, they weren't allowed to have him like directly, confront them or anything like that. So in those comics, I haven't read them, but he's more of like a master planner, like, because they had to like follow the rules that Lucas or whoever sets. Like, okay, you can show Vader, but obviously you can't have them one-upping what we're going to try to do in the movies and stuff. So, but yeah, but all that stuff except for the actual movie stuff that's not canon now, which doesn't bother me too much. The only thing, well, again, I mean, I like all that stuff. The only thing that I read that is not canon now that I really wish still was canon, I'm sure we talked about before, is Shadows of the Empire. Shadows of the Empire is nothing big. It's a fairly small story. It's just a little interquel taking place between Empire and Jedi. I just really enjoy it. I have always really liked it. That because it was part of when I became a real Star Wars fan, was again around 97, 96 when the movies were coming out and stuff, and they made the Shadows of the Empire video game.
Yeah.
And it was the big non-movie event. There was no movie, but there was comics, there was books, there was a soundtrack, there was games. It was cool, and I really like it. So, but yeah, it's not the only thing from Dark Horse that is still considered canon is they did a prequel story, or I don't know if it's a prequel story, but it's a story about Darth Maul. It's still considered canon. It's the only thing from it's called Darth Maul, son of Darthamir, or something like that, and it's the only carryover from the Dark Horse stuff that has managed to come over. Everything else, of course, is Marvel through Disney now. Yeah. But a lot of it seems to be pretty good high quality. I don't know how long that can continue, considering, like anything else, gets oversaturated stuff. But the thing is, it was already kind of oversaturated anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, nothing's more spun off than Star Wars.
I think that what you're talking about, that's the good stuff. I think that's where they need to be getting their material for these movies.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm tired of
I mean, like I said, that's how I've always felt about Alien 3. I always thought the Alien 3, like the comic, would have been so much better than the Alien 3 movie we got, so.
And those Aliens and Predators comics, they're so good. So many of them are so good. But, yeah.
But yeah. But as I said, I mean, I can't help but get myself a little hyped for this movie. Really want it to be good.
I'll do like I did the past 2 times, and I'll keep my expectations low. Because
I definitely didn't have low expectations for Force Awakens. Everything about it felt like a good rejection of the prequels, which I thought was great.
Sure.
I'm not saying Force Awakens was amazing, but it did make me mostly happy. Again, I understand the things. Like I said, it's a little too close to A New Hope in its scope and stuff like that. And
I was totally fine with it. I wasn't disappointed. It was, a fun watch. Something I'm probably not going to go back to the well very often.
I hope that Rey gets a bit more of a personality in this movie, because Rey's kind of a blank slate in A Force Awakens. She's like the main character, but she doesn't seem to have much. I don't know. she's just like sort of spunky, I guess, which I guess is fine. I mean, I understand Star Wars is not a film series full of really deep characters. You know, they're more archetypes and stereotypes and stuff. So I don't want to pick on her too much. But I do think that Rey was kind of bland in the first movie. So I'm hoping that this movie, Rey will, you know, be a little, I don't know, come out of her shell a little more, you know, become more of like a real person. First movie, she just seemed more like a template.
Trying to think, what did they call her? What was the term for the?
Mary Sue?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. It just means she was too good at everything and it didn't make sense.
Right. But I mean, if she's a Jedi, of course.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I was just like, well, it's clear she's, you know, been trained and just doesn't remember. That's like something happened to her and stuff. So like that would just seem ridiculously obvious to me.
I mean, yeah. The reveal of that is going to be kind of underwhelming, I think, just because we all kind of expect it. I mean, fuck, she's there with Luke, of course.
Yeah.
You know, he's going to train her, and you know, she'll go back to fight whatever that guy from the Ramones.
Kylo Ren. A lot of people don't like Kylo Ren, but I like him too because like it's not just a retread of Vader. He's really different, which I appreciate. I like that he's like emotional and messed up and stuff.
I like that actor too, Adam Driver.
I don't think I'd ever seen him before that, but now he's everywhere.
Mm-hmm. But it's like he did a lot of stuff that came out right after that Force Awakens.
Yeah,
came out, so I already knew his name, and I was like, oh wow. But
he's good actor and stuff. I mean, I don't mind the casting exactly, but it doesn't seem very believable that he's the kid of Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher. It's like, what the fuck happened? But
where'd he get that nose?
Yeah, why does he have like long, dark, greasy hair and a huge nose? Like, just keep the mask on.
See, full circle, man. Keep the mask on, just like in Eyes Without a Face.
Yeah, there we go. The mask. Masks have always been important in movies.
Yeah, I like when he throws a temper tantrum.
Yeah,
like I actually like that. I thought that was really funny.
As I said, I like it. It shows like a big difference from like the Sith we're used to. The point is, he's a Sith wannabe. He's not really a full Sith, and he's not in control of his emotions, and he's blah blah blah. So yeah, I actually think he's better than people give him credit for. Now, I understand he is wrapped in that layer of the First Order or whatever they're called, and they're boring. They're just Empire Light. I mean, come on, you got the whole galaxy or whatever. You couldn't come up with something, then it's just like a bunch of. I mean, I get it because I know what I'm saying. Because I was like, I like that he's a Sith wannabe, but I don't like that they're Empire wannabes. I know you could say, oh, that's picky, but I don't know. It just seems like, I don't know.
I agree with you. It's just like they just created them, and now they're going to be just like the Empire.
Yeah, they're just so generic. Like, if there's a scene in the movie I really don't like, it's before they attack the base, and that guy who's like the leader of the base gives that like big Nazi speech in front of the crowd. Like, that's so stupid. I don't like that at all. Just talking about how awesome they are and they're going to blow up more planets and stuff. Like, I didn't like that. Yes, Eyes Without a Face. I would highly recommend it to people, again, interested in horror or French films or films from that era. And it just has this wonderful haunting quality of beauty to it that just reaches this wonderful crescendo in the ending. I love the ending. The ending's so great. I know we always do spoilers on here and stuff like that, but I mean, us talking about it really doesn't do it justice. You have to see it and experience it. I think it'd be worth most people's time. As we said, it's a fairly short movie, fairly easy watch. People who are averse to some subtitles could do 84 minutes of them. Not a big deal. I really like how the people speak in this movie because certain French movies, they speak too fast and I can't follow them. I can follow like 90% of this movie, which makes me feel good about myself because my French has really deteriorated over the years because I don't use it and stuff. So I really like how the actors deliver their lines and stuff. It's in a way I can understand it and stuff.
Well, I mean, the dialogue is really kind of minimal. I mean, you can understand the film without even knowing French.
like I can speak. I know I speak, point that out every once in a while on videos I do, and yeah, sorry about that, guys. We're here for 4 hours. As I said, some of the same now on Dr. World, Colonel Vostills.
Thanks for watching, guys.